So growing up, when you are born different, just I guess the way we define things is by using the word disability. So, um, you hear that word, medical terminology. I heard it in school a lot. My mom listening to places we would go was like, your son has a disability. Well, when we would leave, um, I think I learned earlier on not to get absorbed in that word because a lot of times there's a negative connotation associated with it. So when you hear the word disability, you think, oh, that means this person can't do certain things. And so my mom, just at an early age, not even my mom, grandma, family, just everybody, like my core uh, sphere of influence, which was my family at an earlier age, we swapped those words out. And I think it was critical to developing, a mindset that wasn't limiting, but basically, it challenged me. So we use the word difference instead. You have a limb difference, your hands are different. You're going to have to figure out a different way of doing things. And so when you think about it in terms of difference versus disability, for me, it was always a challenge to work my way through solving problems, to be able to do things that other people do, to be able to do things that I wanted to do. And I still look at it the same way. You take away that negative connotation and then you open yourself up so you can challenge yourself with what is possible based on, for me, based on the way I was born.
So you were born without hands at the wrist bone. I can see you, but I wanted
Okay.
for people that can't see you and haven't been to your website yet or seen your social media, which is
Yeah.
amazing. So please go to it. We'll put links on the website. But describe what your difference is to people who can't see you.
My formal diagnosis is bilateral hand absence. Pretty much, I was born without hands. I do have my wrists, but the rest of my hands and fingers didn't develop. When I was a baby, up until about the age of 2, I did have a partial thumb and pinky. I had an incident with one where, like, one of my pinkies where I got it slammed in a door, so I had to get them. I had to go through a surgical procedure to remove them, just so I wouldn't run into anything like that later on. But as far as the book is concerned, it is bilateral hand absence. My case is actually really unique because typically, when you do have somebody born with a limb difference, it's asymmetrical, so it affects one hand or one side and not the other. I was, I guess, looking back I think I'm very fortunate because I have symmetry. So even though I do have the limb difference, I have the symmetry on both sides, so I don't really have to overcompensate with one side versus the other.
And when you say, I want to be the greatest artist with a difference,
Hmm.
and I can see behind you artwork, and I have looked at your pieces. You're an incredibly talented artist. And you not an incredibly talented artist asterisk with a difference, like just straight up an incredibly talented artist who can draw faces and paint. I guess I don't know your medium, you can talk about that, but because I can't tell if it's a painting or not. Maybe you do both. Anyway, what I saw online, it's like a photograph, but it's art that you're making of people that I recognize, famous people, people that I've never seen, people in your mind, people that you may know. You're a very, very talented human being.
Thank you.
So I talked about the medium. So correct me. What's your favorite medium, and what did I just screw up about your art?
Yeah. So I paint oil portraits. I started drawing back when I was a kid, but going back to the whole problem solving thing, really the way I got started with art was learning how I was going to start school. And so my mom was very big on me getting an education. From the moment I was born, she knew no matter what, I was going to go to college. And so, in order to do that, I had to be able to attend classes and start grade school. She didn't want me, separated from the group. She wanted me in classes like, everybody else. Um, and so we had to figure out how to write. And that's what got me started with drawing. I figured out how to write. But then just as a byproduct of it, I did that through coloring. I started tracing, and then when I was about 5 or 6, I found out or figured out that I could look at stuff and actually draw those things. And then from there, what really kind of motivated me earlier on, it was a love for animation and storytelling. And it was because I didn't see people like myself in the cartoons that I was watching or comic books, or when I did see those people that may have had a limb difference, a lot of times they were villains or bad guys, or they were like made to be scary. And it's like, well, I'm neither of those things. I'm just a kid trying to be a kid. And so I really earlier on, I wanted to learn how to draw and make my own cartoons. So then that way I could tell that story and change that narrative. And then as I got older, discovered Bob Ross,
Mhm.
um, and also through some camps and opportunities that my mom found, got exposed to other media, other types of media. So clay sculpture, painting murals, figure drawing, things like that. And it progressed throughout grade school. And I actually went to college for digital art and computer animation. And one night I was working on something and I had a file corrupt, and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to paint. And this was probably about 12 or so years ago at this point. And I just really got back into painting. And since then, at first I kind of bounced around, but the reason I settled on painting people, one was to challenge myself to control the medium on a canvas or whatever surface I was working on. But then two, going back to my whole love for animation and storytelling and things like that, um, just the opportunity to be able to capture someone in a moment that allows viewers to create a story around that image. Um, that's really the main reason I settled on portraiture.
Which for many people that's a really scary thing to do because you're painting people that other people know. And I saw Barack Obama picture, John Wayne, Audrey Hepburn on your website. I mean, people that I can visualize what they look like, and I look at your images, and it doesn't take me any time to know exactly who that person is. So a lot of folks, like to me, drawing a or painting a bowl of fruit would seem a lot simpler than Barack Obama with emotion on his face. That you can tell this story about, he's contemplating the weight of being a president is kind of on him. It seems like you took the hardest path possible. Is that accurate as someone who isn't an artist?
Yeah, I have a tendency to do that, and I may be telling on myself here. But even as far back as I can remember, um, even learning how to operate with no hands as a kid, I had prosthetic devices. And I think a lot of times where my mindset comes from with challenging myself in that manner is like I would get used to using the prosthetic devices. I had some to help me like button my shirt, eat food at the earliest when I was about 2 or 3 years old. So I would get these devices, and then between my mom and my grandma and I, we would figure out how not to use them. And so the challenge there was always, our question was always, what if you were spending the night at somebody's house and you forget something? What if it breaks and you don't expect it to? What are you going to do? And so I would get things to help me initially solve the problem and then figure out how not to use those things. And I think just in other areas of my life, it's like, well, you can take the easy route and do this. For example, I skipped a grade. I started school early and then I skipped a grade. So once I got my test scores back, this happened when I was in the fourth grade. I remember a conversation with my mom, and she was like, "Well, you have the option, to go ahead and move up a grade, or you can stay where you're at." And for whatever reason, I can remember my thought process at the time. I was like, well, if I go ahead and go to the fifth grade, then I can graduate from high school earlier. And then that means I can finish college earlier and I can start working. And then, I can do some of the things just overall I wanted to do in my life. And, you know, it was really like, it's always the challenge, because I think if you challenge and push yourself like that, for me personally, um, it's not so much for other people as it is for myself. Like a lot of times it's like, you know what? I wonder if I can do that. I could have stayed in fourth grade. It's like, you know what? Let's see if I can do this. And I just go into it with an open mind, and that's my way of pushing myself. And I feel like someone with a difference, and then that word disability is just, it's me choosing to constantly overcome that, to see how far I can go.